Welcome back. One final point before we go tonight. Happy Law Enforcement Appreciation Day, one day late. It was actually yesterday. But Chelsea Manning, the traitor formerly known as Bradley Manning, the one who stole classified national security secrets from our government and gave them to WikiLeaks to publish so our enemies could see our secrets, the same one who used our tax money to chop off his genitals and paint his fingernails while he was in prison, Chelsea Manning has a message for law enforcement officials everywhere. F the police. That's right, F the police. Who do you think is going to respond when you call 911, Chelsea? Bert and Ernie? Not only are you a despicable person who should not be walking free on the streets of America, let me hit you with a few facts, Chelsea. Number one, 127 law enforcement officials were killed in the line of duty last year, in 2017. That's more than 2 cops killed every single week. They were killed protecting you and protecting me. These law enforcement officials don't care whether you're a Democrat or a Republican or a traitor to our nation. They take an oath to give their lives to protect yours. And they do give their lives. Like the black female police officer who was executed at point-blank range, shot in the back of the head by a maniac who believed the utter tripe about police spewed by ignorant criminals like you. Show a little respect for the men and women in blue. Number two, you tweet malicious garbage about 987 innocent people being killed by police officers in 2017, yet you fail to mention the truth about this number. You fail to mention that 457 of these people were white, over half were white. You failed to mention that 579 were in possession of a firearm at the time they were confronted by police. 156 were in possession of a knife, and only 68 out of 987, that's 6%, were unarmed, which of course does not mean that they were not posing a lethal threat to officers. At least 339 were fleeing the scene at the time they were shot by police. And yes, of course, it's a tragedy every time somebody loses their life. It's a shame you didn't think about that before you betrayed our country and published 700,000 classified documents that our enemies can use against our country and our people. But to claim police killed 987 innocent people, that is a lie. And that brings us to number three, where you claim that, quote, police kill hundreds of people every year with absolute impunity. Okay, first of all, hands up, don't shoot. That did not happen. Police targeting of black men because they're black, that did not happen. What did happen is 7 law enforcement officials in the state of Texas were massacred because a radical black nationalist, sympathizer to the Black Lives Matter movement, assassinated the officers in cold blood and hatred after listening to vitriol spewed by ignorant jackasses like you. What also happened is Harvard professor Roland Fryer compiled a comprehensive study of police reports from departments all across the country, and he found that not only are police not targeting black men, police are actually more likely to shoot a white person than a black person. And what also happens every day that Chelsea conveniently ignores is police officers across our nation are brave enough to put on that blue uniform and risk their lives to keep us safe, answering the call of duty regardless of their skin color, facing tragic and perilous situations, making split-second choices nobody should have to make, choosing between the life of the suspect attacking them or their own life. While you, Chelsea, stand with our enemies, betray our country, and paint rainbows on your nails, police officers stand ready to risk their lives to keep you safe. So to law enforcement officials all over our nation, the men and women in blue, thank you for protecting our communities and keeping us safe. We appreciate you, and we appreciate what you do. And to Chelsea Manning, convicted spy and loser, get lost. And that's my final point. You can reach me on Twitter at Liz_Wheeler. If you liked the show, please send me an email at oann.com/contact. In the meantime, catch us here tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern. And until then, have a good night. Welcome back. One final point before we go tonight. Hollywood starlets flooded the red carpet at the Golden Globes last night, draped in all black to show solidarity with the #MeToo campaign. You know, even though many of these actresses likely knew about the rampant sexual harassment and abuse that plagues Hollywood, but never said a word about it. Nonetheless, these virtue-signaling elites brought so-called women's rights activists with them as dates to the awards show. Women's rights activists who champion abortion, who praise Black Lives Matter, who fawned over Hillary Clinton, Occupy Wall Street, illegal immigration, you name it. But guess who these Hollywood elites did not bring to the red carpet? Guess who they forgot to include in their parade of progressive politicos masked as women's rights activists? That's right, women who are actually fighting the oppression of women. So I've compiled a list of some women activists Hollywood starlets should have brought to the Golden Globes instead. Let's start with Nikki Haley, U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations. This minority woman stands up for the rights of oppressed women all over the world. Women in Israel who were bombed, stabbed, and slaughtered by radical Islamist terrorists because the women are Jewish. Nikki Haley condemns female genital mutilation. She canceled funding for countries who condemn the United States. She is proud, strong, and a true leader, unafraid to stand up to liberal political correctness, even when the left is sexist. Then we have Lila Rose and Sandra Merritt. Lila Rose is a millennial who exposed racism at Planned Parenthood. Did you know you could donate to Planned Parenthood and have them save your donation to be used to abort a black baby because you hate black people? Nobody knew about that until Lila Rose exposed the truth. Sandra Merritt, and I bet you don't know this name, do ya? Sandra Merritt is facing felony charges in the state of California for investigative journalism. Ms. Merritt risked her own livelihood and safety to stand up for the unborn women at Planned Parenthood who were aborted and then had their body parts chopped up and harvested and sold. Ms. Merritt was David Daleidon's partner in the videos exposing Planned Parenthood's aborted baby body parts business, protecting the most vulnerable women among us. Dana Lash. 200,000 times a year, women defend ourselves against sexual abuse with a firearm. Defend ourselves against sexual abuse. You know, the same sexual abuse Hollywood is pretending to reject. Dana Lash is actually rejecting it, teaching other women to stand up for our Second Amendment rights. So instead of saying #MeToo, we can say #NotMe. The female protesters in Iran who are rejecting a brutal, repressive regime, they're shedding their hijabs and declaring their independence from a government who arrests them if they don't wear a headscarf, where they aren't allowed to travel without permission from their husbands, where they're married off without their permission to men with other wives as young as 13 years old, and where marital rape is essentially legal. These women in Iran are protesting at their own risk for their own liberty. Yet all we saw on the red carpet at the Golden Globes were women who champion abortion, which ends the lives of approximately 400,000 unborn women every single year in our country. Black Lives Matter, whose false narrative and faulty premise has led to an increase in violence against police officers. In fact, a black female police officer was executed, shot in the back of the head at point-blank range by a maniac who hated police. It's funny how the women who are actually standing up for women's rights, the women who are risking their lives in Iran, their livelihoods in California, exposing racism at Planned Parenthood, helping women arm themselves against sexual abuse, those women at the Golden Globes were ignored. And that's my final point. You can reach me on Twitter at Liz_Wheeler. If you liked the show, please send me an email at oann.com/contact. In the meantime, catch us here tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern. And until then, have a good night. Welcome back. One final point before we go tonight. Now, I don't think it matters what side of the aisle you're on for this one. I think we can all agree that this is absolutely insane. The Committee to Protect Journalists has announced that their top press oppressor of 2017 was President Donald J. Trump. I kid you not. In the words of Democrats who have been fabricating bogus stories about the Trump administration all week this week, you can't make this stuff up. But it's funny because I don't remember President Trump arresting, jailing, stifling, deporting, hacking, tapping, or killing journalists. But I do remember how easily liberal snowflakes get their feelings hurt. So what has President Trump done to oppress the press? Let's look at this from a factual standpoint. Has President Trump jailed journalists? No, he hasn't. That was Cuba. In fact, in Cuba's constitution, it's illegal to report on anything if it doesn't, quote, conform to the ideas of a socialist society. Does President Trump censor stories he doesn't like or prohibit negative stories from going to print or air? No, he doesn't. That's China. Do reporters disappear after they dare to accuse Trump of corruption? No, also China and, in some cases, the Clintons. Has President Trump shot reporters who don't parrot his propaganda? No, he hasn't. That's Kim Jong-un in North Korea. Has President Trump commandeered private media networks and put government in charge instead? No, that was President Erdogan in Turkey. In fact, you can actually be thrown in jail in Turkey if you print an unflattering photo of Erdogan. Jail for an ugly picture. Has President Trump killed journalists who criticize him? No. Allegedly, that's Vladimir Putin. Has President Trump given the A-OK for surveillance of private journalists? No, he hasn't. That was President Obama who recorded phone calls of Associated Press journalists and Fox News' James Rosen. Has President Trump hacked the laptop and tapped the home of an investigative reporter who was about to break huge news on the Fast and Furious scandal that would have reflected badly on his administration? No, again, that was President Obama whose administration targeted Cheryl Atkinson. So what has Trump done to oppress the press? Oh, that's right, nothing. What we have here are liberals who got your feelings hurt by President Trump, and I hate to break it to you, but your feelings here don't matter. What matters is you're alive, you're free, you're not in jail, you're able to criticize the president without risking your life, your liberty, or your property, and even when the president calls you liars, cheaters, and dishonest political hacks, which you are, you're still allowed to do your jobs in safety and liberty. You know what that's called? That's called freedom of the press. And that is my final point. You can reach me on Twitter at Liz_Wheeler. If you like the show, please send me an email at oann.com/contact. In the meantime, catch us here tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern, and until then, have a good night.